Bravo. It's not easy to sit down and just launch into that without, you know, the context of the first two movements, and you handled it very beautifully. You play it with great beauty as well as great polish. For me, the qualities which I slightly miss are specificity, meaning you know, and a kind of a precision of what kind of character you are looking for moment to moment, and what kind of a sound, therefore, you want to make to express that character, and intensity. I have to say that this movement, if it's correct to refer to it as one movement, I think probably it is it's an epic journey, you know, that goes from really the depths of despair to a kind of an exaltation which can only come out of the depths of despair. And I didn't feel that either of those extremes were fully realized, you know. And I think the extremes are the source of the intensity, which is really, you know, Beethoven's middle name, basically. So what we have basically as pianists, as musicians, two tools: sound and time, right? And so what I would like to work on is using both of those tools to create a greater sense of urgency. Urgency has nothing to do with speed. In fact, sometimes in the slow movement, I wanted more resistance, but a feeling that what is being said is an urgent matter. And so in terms of time, part of it has to do with the absolute unmovable pulse. That it's fine for the pulse for you to play around it, for you to sometimes move slightly ahead of it and sometimes move to the back of it. What is not fine is the feeling that the pulse itself is negotiable. For example, in something like I haven't ever counted, but it must be over 100 of these 16th notes in a row, right? And it's interesting that he writes it in the very odd time signature of 12/16, right? He could have so easily have said this was in 2/4 and made them sextuplets. Every 16th is a beat. Every 16th has a meaning. And I somehow felt that there was kind of too much of an easy sway about it rather than a terrible insistence. So that's time, or that's the beginning of time. And in terms of sound, again, a lot of it is tied to this question of specificity, and I'm going to talk to you moment by moment about, I think, ways in which you can experiment with sound. But I think a willingness to go to the bottom of the note, to find the center of the note, the bottom of the key, I think will serve you well, because there's something in your sound which is what I would describe as soft-grained, which is beautiful. It's wonderful. I mean, that you know how to avoid the edginess, which is such an issue with the piano. But the edges that the piano has are also useful in some ways. And there were many moments where I just thought that you were disguising that side of the instrument to such an extent that I missed the sense of urgency expressed through sound. Yeah. So those are the kind of the global ideas, and then now we'll work a little bit more specifically. So I mean, I think all music, or nearly all music, benefits from thinking vocally, but in a movement that has something called arioso in it, I think we have almost an obligation to think that way. So I would love, even from the beginning, this is not the aria yet, of you to think of a human voice. It's, he writes unichord, it's obviously supposed to be very soft, but if you could just play it again and have more in the upper voice of a spoken quality. Yeah. So in that's the first gesture of the piece. What is the most expressive interval in it?
The slur.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, this doesn't need any particular intensity between the notes, but from here has to really be dug into. You know, to me, I think that maybe because you say the una corda, that you're trying to play a little bit on the surface of the key, and when you play on the surface of the key, you cannot really play between the notes. Once more. That's much better. The other quality which I think is significant about this opening is the way the chords are spaced. That if it was, or, you know, it would somehow be a fuller sound. There's something about the fact that you have the bass all the way down here, the top voice there, and that there are literally more than 2 octaves of empty space in between. I think that this sound should be barren. I mean, think of it in opposition, again, to this, where I think one wants a kind of a density. I think here the sound, I hesitate to use this word because I want to make sure that you have substance in the sound, but there is something ghostly about it. Hollow, hollowed out, you know, just based on all of this absence in the middle of the chord. You know, for that interval to be meaningful, it's not enough to start thinking about it here. You have to be focused on it with the first note. The interval is between 2 notes. So you need to already play with an extra level of I would say, plushness into the key from the G flat. Think of it if you sang possibly a little bit too slow, but more than that, what I think is problematic is I feel your pulse as the 8th note, whereas I think it should definitely not be anything smaller than the quarter, especially since in the first bar there's very little harmonic motion, there's no change in the bass. So I think if you attract our attention to the small beats, it's putting our attention where nothing all that significant is happening. Much better. And now the bass changes. Yeah, and again, there is one interval in the bar that's so much more significant than the rest. So this is nothing, but this now, the distance. Again, if you think in terms of a singer, again, which I think really, at least until the fugue, you should think of all of this in terms of a singer. You can't produce those 2 notes with the same part of the body, even. You know, you really need to, you feel the sound transfer from there to there. It should be the same kind of thing. Right? Once more. More motion. Yeah, so I missed the feeling of this being a different kind of music. That for the first 3 bars, it's already vocal, but it has the absolutely unwavering support of the bass, right? You have the melodic line moving along with a bass, which in the first bar is static, but it's there, and then in the second bar it begins to move, right? And then they both begin to move a bit faster. And then after 3 bars, it simply goes away, right? And then there's nothing, right? Left alone, recitative. And so the feeling of the tether being taken away and suddenly being in some sort of a fantastical parallel reality. I missed that a little bit, that there's some amount of rigor in the first 3 bars, and now the rigor has absolutely been exploded. Maybe just the 3rd bar to get the contrast. Yeah, and with the rigor, it's a little bit of intensity in the sound. Just make sure that every note is spoken, a spoken word. So for the whole recitative, no bass and no harmonic motion, right? We're in this place of limbo, I would say. And then now, new harmony, new harmony, new harmony, new harmony. And he writes this faster tempo. I think the reason he writes andante is because for the first time in the piece, he wants you to feel a kind of an urgency in the motion, right? And then suddenly it goes away and we're again this kind of recitative fantasy world. Can you play once more from here? So every note spoken. Harmony, harmony, harmony. That's completely lost. Yeah, I should mention also that it's not just that there's 3 new harmonies there, it's that it takes you from A flat minor to, which is again, like you cannot get farther. It's what, 7 flats, A flat minor, to 4 sharps, right? In the space of 3 notes, right? So there should be a sense of a dramatic, fast evolution, and then the sound should be completely different. Whereas what I liked was that you had a kind of a covered sound here. I think for the 4 sharps, as soft as it is, shining, more kind of piano but brilliant. Yeah. Can you just play? Yeah, and you know, this very strange marking of the the 2 same notes, the same note with the slur. Somehow the repetition has to feel different from the first one. That there, even though it's, if you were to play this, right, you would never play the 2 notes the same volume and with the same intensity. Even though it's the same note, you still have to have this feeling of tension, release, action, reaction. So not, but that, yeah, something is lifted on the second note. Just from there. Very good. Cantabile. Sing. Yeah, that to me doesn't sound like a vocal expression. And I mean, when he writes cantabile, that means sung. It really, I think, literally means human voice, you know. So, and there's something about this is so stuck, right? That the feeling now of actually having some kind of a direction should give this sound a new purpose. Yep. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and now it exhausts itself towards a resolution. Now harmonic motion. Yeah, very beautiful. A couple of little things. The beginning of the crescendo, I think, should be the low point. And the whole opening of the movement up to this point has been kind of fits and starts. Like he tries one idea and then he rejects it. And then he tries another idea and then he rejects it. And then he tries another one and he rejects it. This is going to be finally when the movement proper gets going, right? So this, where he writes diminuendo, getting softer, smorzando, dying away, should be kind of, should have an accumulated effect of exhaustion, which is not just about this bar or that bar, but about everything that's happened so far. So when the bass goes away, this is the moment where you can make a sound that's drained of all color. But I think if you've made that sound already here and there, then you somehow, it's not effective anymore. That, you know, you have to find, if you want colorless to be part of your color palette, that's fine. It just has to be one among many, you know. Play one more time from maybe from here and really, really speak with the sound. Yeah, and you know, so this is obviously recitative, right? And you know, for anyone who's heard an opera, when you after you have the orchestra or the continuo instrument should come in with, right? So the fact that we don't get that means that there's a what I would call a terrible ambiguity about the ending. It's in need of some kind of resolution which doesn't come. Instead, only gradually does the minor arrive. So there should be the feeling of inexorably building towards something. The other thing which is, I think, so important about the arioso now, again, this opening has been so halting. He never sticks with one type of music, one type of sound, one type of idea for longer than a measure or a measure and a half. So now, when we have these 16ths, which go constantly, without interruption, without any sort of pause or comma or punctuation, through the whole arioso, it has to be unyielding. It shouldn't be fast at all. In fact, it should be there should be quite a powerful feeling of resistance, but it has to be unmoving. You know, that again, the eternal quality in this arioso, in opposition to the wishy-washiness of everything that's come before, is where the music gets its power. So whatever you do, do not yield. No, there is no yielding in this music. Can you play just once again? See, that to me, that happens too automatically. I would like for you to finish this and expect an answer. And when it doesn't come, that's when you have to find your own way on. You can just play from the, yeah, and that chord, the diminished chord has to cut. Beautiful. Don't push. So two things. Can the color evolve when it goes from simply the E flat to the 2-note chord, and then evolve again when it goes to the 3-note chord? It becomes more terrible with the addition of every note. And the other thing is the crescendo goes nearly to the end, right? Not just to here, it continues. I think the only reason he stops it at all before the end is just to make sure that he clears the sound a little bit for the the Ario Dolente, or just from there would be fine. And again, absolutely unyielding. It never gets faster. It never gets slower. You know, there's faithfulness in the rhythm. Much better. The only other thing I would ask is, even when you have the octave, but especially with a 3-note chord, I want the sound to have more density in it. It sounds a little bit, it's not a question of a volume, it's a little bit too loose. I want the feeling of this in the sound. I don't have a word for it, beyond density. I swear this is the last time I'm going to stop you before the... But again, what I'm slightly troubled by is that I hear ease of motion. And there shouldn't be anything about this in either the sound or in the timing that telegraphs ease. You know, I think that I struggle to think of music which is more a communication of pain than this. You know, so everything in your timing and in the kind of sound that you pursue has to suggest effort, has to suggest difficulty. You know, this is the attempt to go on the part of a person who can barely go on. Yeah. Once more. And that's the voice. So this is probably orchestra, right? There's a different kind of sound here. So again, and every note that's coming has a vowel. Many of them probably also have a consonant, right? But certainly ta-da, that you speak in that way. Yeah. Sometimes I don't make words in the sense of telling a story, but I sometimes imagine, you know, what the specific vowels are, just so that it's a way of finding, again, this kind of this precision of sound that I'm talking about. Once more, I promised last time. Say, and I'm not a person who likes slow tempos in general. I certainly am not a person who thinks that slow means profound. In fact, I have an allergy to that idea. But if I didn't know the piece, I would think that this was andante, you know? And I mean, the monotropo, of course, does mean that he doesn't want it too slow, but in Beethoven, adagio means that the general feeling is not forward. And I feel that there is a kind of an easiness about how you progress from one idea to the next. Again, that there's a sense of a resistance in the sound and in the timing. You can play just from. Much better. And can you make this crescendo with the belief all the way through that you will arrive, you know, and only at the very, very last second is the rug pulled out from under. I mean, again, that's the intensity in the Beethoven subito piano comes again from the belief that you're leading somewhere that you never get to. Once more. Can I ask, I'm sorry, I'm being so stubborn, I apologize, but you know, after the end of this hour, you can reject every single word I say. So until then, I'm going to really try to make my point. Risk playing too slow. You know, I think this is something that we all have to do, that to find the right tempo for something in our own work, we have to cross the line and go too far in the slow direction and too far in the fast. Unless you find out what the limits of what works are, you will never find the solution. It's the same thing in terms of, you know, how expressive one should be. You have to sometimes know what it means to cross the boundaries of good taste to know where the boundary is. If you never cross the boundary, you don't find out. So now, I mean, it might be terrible, but try playing with too much of a sense of gravity and resistance and slowness. Yeah. Longer crescendo. And this one builds and builds. Beautiful. That's beautiful. I have to say, just so you know my opinion, for me that's not too slow. For me it actually now has an extra layer of the sense of enormous difficulty without losing anything. Because of course, I think the number one danger in a slow tempo is that you lose a sense of line. And your sense of line to me was beautiful there. So I mean, of course, it ultimately can only be your decision. But to me, that was not, dangerously slow. Maybe from this phrase. Make sure that it's very difficult because the left hand has to do two things at once. It has to convey a sense of direction, but also this sense of gravity. So make sure that you don't, what I hear is you playing a little bit in groups of three rather than giving every single one a kind of force. I'm just going to take your music for 1 second. The one thing which I think will help you is, what's obviously difficult, especially at this tempo, is to create a line with the right hand, even though, for most of this phrase, the notes are so long, and every note on the piano is a death. You play it and it starts to disappear immediately. I think that you're not helping yourself by being so still in your arm. That obviously, I'm not an actually crazy person, so I do understand that you can't control the sound of the note after you play it, but I think if you think of the arm being the architect of the line and being therefore ever so slightly active during the note rather than there being a point of stasis and then beginning again, then you will be better equipped to create the illusion of a line that is constant and never has any points of stopping in it. It's a very subtle motion, but that you never have actual stasis. Sorry. Yeah. Good. Yeah, and I always think that the sense of outpouring in this is so enormous that this next phrase has to somehow represent a kind of a retreat from it. Even just the register, the fact that we don't get within an octave where we were before, that it's not lower in intensity, it's just that the intensity is held in, whereas in the previous phrase, and indeed in the subsequent one, it's naked for all to see. One more time, and just to make the contrast between those two. So you did what we all do, which is you see crescendo and you play louder. Instead, I think the beginning of the crescendo can always be the low point. Because you have quite a long while to go. Maybe from there? Yeah, and because that interval is so beautiful, make sure you have enough intensity on that note to feel the connection between E flat, B double flat. Now build every single 16th. It's beautiful, really very beautiful. What I would like to hear more of is, because the main voice changes on the offbeats, you generally have two harmonies underneath each note. So, sorry, not even close. So, and then, and even this one A flat, and then the A flat is changed by that context, right? So that you keep an ear on the unchanging note and allow it to evolve as the chord underneath it evolves. Yeah? Maybe just from I think part of the secret is you need enough sound at the beginning of the note that when the harmony changes, we still are conscious of it. This is an incredible moment. It's the only moment in the arioso where I think anything seriously competes with the top line. I think what I would love is the feeling of a shudder in the alto line. It really does. It's kind of amazing how this music simultaneously is the most genuine expression of grief and a little bit theatrical. It is a performance of it at the same time. So I think, in a gesture like that, there should be something a little bit more public, There's something also about the fact that it's chromatic, right? That the notes are so close together that there's an extra layer of tension because of that. Can you maybe just get into it? Beautiful. And now more. And open one more time. Yeah, when you come away that quickly, I don't feel we get the intensity of, because it should be, right? But instead he chooses to extend the intensity, and then I would make the diminuendo only there, right? once more from here. To the high point. Yeah, and one of the reasons that the density of the sound of these chords is so important to me is that I want the contrast now with these, again, hollow octaves. Right, you know, that this comes from a different section of the orchestra / universe than, you know. I would love to hear a couple of bars of this, again, just to hear that exact juxtaposition. Maybe wherever you'd like to start is fine. Yeah, I think actually, ironically, to get that stark, hollow sound, it can't be too soft. I need a little bit more, again, it's not a question of volume, it's a question of finding the center of the note, right? The difference between and... Yeah, the idea being that we don't know how we could possibly go on until we do. Right? That's the genius of Beethoven. I'm afraid we're going to have to stop. But that's kind of the basic idea that I think you have such an unerring sense of good taste. You really do. I mean, you have it in you, which is a great quality, because if you don't have it, God help you, and many people don't. That I think you don't need to be afraid to push the boundaries of the possible, because Beethoven's music, I probably said it to you in the last couple of days because I can't seem to get away from the idea. Beethoven's music is extreme because he is an extreme personality, and usually whatever the character of the music is at any given moment, it generally speaking is that character to the nth degree, So I think you can experiment with using, again, these resources of variety and intensity of sound and timing, to really try to find an extremity of character, a sense of pushing what you're doing to its natural limit, and then maybe a little bit beyond also. And that, I think, will add a dimension to what already is really beautifully proportioned, beautifully shaped, and beautifully realized playing. So really bravo. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.